Hi, so Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, my group will continue with the sexual ethics for part 2, which consists of natural law and unnatural acts, homosexuality, incest, and HIV or AIDS. So I will start with natural law. So what is natural law? Natural law is a philosophy that certain rights, moral values, and responsibility are inherent in human nature, which is exists in human nature lah kan. And those rights can be understood through simple reasoning without complex reasoning. So easy to understand, the theory natural law ni dia believe that law, undang-undang should be based on morality or ethics. So the founder of natural law is actually Aristotle, but the developer, maksudnya yang mendevelopkan teori natural law ni Thomas Aquinas. So Thomas Aquinas ni dia lebih banyak cakap lah pasal natural law ni. So based on him, natural law ni dia deeply connected dengan morality. So human morality dia comes from nature. So dia connect lah, natural law ni dia ada relationship dengan human morality. Everything in nature it has purpose. So includes human. Macam tu juga dalam manusia. Manusia pun ada purpose kehidupan lah. Maksudnya ada tujuan hidup lah kan. So based on Thomas Aquinas ni, human purpose is to have a good life, to have a happy and good life. So any action that against this purpose, any action yang against good life and happy life is considered as unnatural ataupun immoral. Law also has its purpose, which is law ni untuk provide justice. So based on Thomas Aquinas, aku cakap, so any action sama lah, any action that yang oppose dengan justice ni, yang tak adil, unjust action is dikira bukan law. Natural law maintains that this rule or right and wrong are inherent in people and are not created by society, culture or court judges. So macam saya cakap tadi lah, dia senang, dia simple reasoning, which is rules sama ada right ataupun wrong, betul tak betul, salah tak salah, betul, dia dua tu je. So and dia come from human nature, not from society, culture ataupun court judge. Dia tak ada siapa yang tentukan benda tu, dia memang human nature. Faham tak? Okay, so theological ethics is drawn to natural law. Maksudnya theories ataupun philosopher, they drawn to natural law because two fundamental reasons dua sebab, which is first is moral standards are based in reality and this sense objective rather than manufactured by human decision. And ethicists ataupun philosopher atau theories are attracted to natural law for its universal scope and its claim to apply to all human beings. Maksudnya natural law ni boleh di-apply dengan oleh semua orang, tak kira darjat, tak kira umur ke. Contoh yang saya boleh katakan, contoh konsep senang lah, natural law, benda yang simple, kita tahu benda buruk dan baik, which is contohnya killing. So kalau siapa pun yang membunuh, whoever is killing is considered as that is a wrong action. So tak kisahlah siapa yang bunuh, saya yang bunuh ke, lecturer yang bunuh ke, ataupun raja, even orang tu dia ada tahta ke, ada kedudukan, ada level dia, menteri tu yang membunuh, still considered as that person is doing a wrong action. That is natural law lah, benda tu kita semua tahu. So moving on to the next slide, which is the difference between natural law and positive law. Natural law is yang macam saya cakap tadi tu, positive law is man-made law. Natural law is built in as human nature, but positive law tu dia created by human in context of society. Maksudnya man-made lah kan, dia berdasarkan society ataupun community tu. So natural law, civil law should be based on morality and ethics, but positive law defined by statute and common law and may or may not reflect the natural law. Maksudnya dia positive law ni, man-made law ni, dia dah ada written law lah, dia dah ada enactment dia semua. So dia boleh jadi dia reflect dengan natural law, boleh jadi tidak, ada yang masuk, dia tak masuk macam tu lah. So natural law also does not provide justice. Law that does not provide justice, flawed law, not considered as law. Maksudnya even ada satu undang-undang tu, satu action tu, even benda tu macam ada slightly flaw lah dalam undang-undang tu, tak provide justice untuk satu pihak, dia terus tak considered as law. Tapi kalau positive law can be deeply flawed, positive law can be deeply flawed and yet still considered as law, walaupun ada sedikit macam ketidakadilan. Tapi kalau macam ada di beberapa pihak, ada pihak tertentu ataupun situasi tertentu, dia still considered as wrong. Kita balik kepada Thomas Aquinas tadi, reason is the source of moral law. Reason is the source of moral law that direct human towards the good. And good is the ultimate goal of person action and discoverable within human. Jadi dalam setiap orang ni, dia punya goal in action is doing good lah. Maksudnya semua orang akan kena buat baik lah. Itu goal kehidupan manusia. Sama dia nak buat jahat kan. And do good, avoid evil. And a good action is suitable to human nature. Okay, but sometimes human action produce two conflict results that either may one is good or may one is bad. Contohnya ada satu action tu yang kompleks tu macam susah untuk ditentukan. Jadi saya kata natural law ni dia simple action ni, simple reason kan. Kita boleh tahu itu baik atau salah. Tapi untuk certain cases, human action ni dia boleh conflict result dia sama ada baik atau buruk. So to go that, untuk menentukan result tu, Thomas Aquinas dia come out with 4 principle of double effect. So kira macam 4 principle double effect ni ialah macam kriteria yang perlu dipenuhi untuk satu action tu dijadikan baik, ditentukan baik ataupun tidak berdasarkan natural law. So apakah prinsipal ataupun kriteria tersebut? Which is first, the action intended must be good itself. Maksudnya kita tahu, kita boleh tengok lah. Macam senang kata macam tengok satu-satu action tu is good, memang bagus, memang baik. Second, the good effect, maksudnya the good consequences from the action must follow the action at least as immediately as the evil effect are simultaneously. Maksudnya the good effect or the good consequence yang datang daripada action tu mesti kena datang cepat lah, sebaik selepas action tu dilakukan. Even ada evil effect ataupun bad effect, dia kena datang lebih awal daripada bad effect tersebut ataupun sama dengan bad effect tersebut. Third is the foreseen evil effect should not be intended or approved but merely permitted to occur. Maksudnya foreseen evil effect kan dalam sudut action kan maybe ada evil effect tapi benda tu tak intended, unconsciously benda tu datang dalam action tersebut. And lastly is there must be a proportionate and sufficient reason for allowing the evil effect to occur. Maksudnya kena ada sebab lah kenapa evil effect tu ada dalam action tersebut. So ini macam pening sikit kan. So saya akan bagi contoh dan kita revise balik 4 prinsipal ni sama ada benda tu bersesuaian dengan natural law ataupun tidak. Okay. Untuk contoh yang pertama is removing a cancerous uterus of a pregnant woman. Maksudnya untuk buang cancer uterus dekat abortion of a pregnant woman, which is means simple understand is abortion lah. So abortion ni dalam natural law benda ni baik ke tidak? Okay, so dia macam konflik kan, macam ada baik ada buruk, which is dia come out lah. Good effect dia selamatkan, dia save the pregnant woman, but the bad effect ataupun evil effect is killing the fetus. So kita revise balik the 4 principle of double effect. Okay, first, the action intended must be good itself. Okay, so dalam issue abortion, the main factor kita buat abortion is to save the pregnant woman. So action abortion tersebut dah jadi baik. Okay, so dia menepati principle number 1. Okay, so we go through this principle number 2. The good effect must follow the action at least immediately. Okay, good effect which is recovery of the pregnant woman. Maksudnya lepas abortion tu, cancer tu dah tak ada. So number 2 principle correct. Maksudnya bersesuaian, correct. So because we can see the pregnant woman lah kan, at least immediately or as evil effect or simultaneously, which is dalam abortion tu duduk evil effect berlaku, good effect pun berlaku. Evil effect is fetus ataupun baby tu tidak dapat diselamatkan, which is considered killing kan. Okay, third is foreseen evil effect should not be intended or approved but merely permitted occur. Okay, in abortion cases tadi, evil effect is killing the fetus, right? So benda tu sebenarnya bukan intended, which is bukan reason utama kita melakukan abortion. So benda tu just foreseen evil effect tu kita tak intend pun nak buat benda tu, dia just macam permitted to occur, dia just tiba-tiba kena terpaksa berlaku lah benda tu kiranya. Okay, so principle number 3 also diterima. And lastly, principle number 4 ada sufficient reason. Sufficient reason to kill the fetus is to save the mother. At least dalam hal ni kita dapat selamatkan satu nyawa daripada kalau kita tak buang uterus tu, kita tak buat abortion tu, kita akan hilang kedua nyawa. So principle number 4 also accepted and therefore abortion in these cases is considered as good action. So kita tengok balik. Okay, so So moving on to the next example, which is killing a drug lord, killing a drug gila lah kononnya. Okay, in macam pemahaman kita lah kan, kalau kita bunuh drug gila tu, dia dapat selamatkan ramai orang sebab dia tak dapat nak distribute drug kan. So dalam kalau dalam isu ni, kalau ikut utilitarian theory, benda ni terima sebab teori utilitarian kan macam greatest happiness of greatest number kan. So benda ni utilitarian terima lah, sebab kalau kita bunuh drug gila tu kan banyak kebaikan dia kan. Tapi dalam natural law, dalam Thomas Aquinas punya teori in natural law, benda ni salah. Sebab okay, kita tengok balik principle tadi, 4 principle of double effect. First principle, the action intended must be good itself, which is action pertama dia ialah untuk membunuh drug gila. So benda tu awal-awal sekali dah benda tu membunuh, killing, which is natural law kata salah. Walaupun kau ada reason ke apa kan, tapi benda tu dah salah. Natural killing is a bad action. So in this case, killing a drug dealer is totally wrong in natural law, even dia akan memberi kebaikan untuk ramai orang. Walaupun tadi dalam principle of double effect, nombor 4 tadi dia punya principle, even effect tu kita kena come out with sufficient reason kan. Walaupun reason dia untuk selamatkan orang, maksudnya memberi kebaikan kepada orang, tapi benda tu jatuh kepada principle nombor 4. So kalau in this natural theory, even principle nombor 1 tak diterima, kita terus reject it as a good action based on Thomas Aquinas theory. So apabila first principle tu dah di-reject, so another 3 principle kita tak payah nak refer pun. So totally reject lah. So that's all from natural law. We will continue with the unnatural act. Thank you.
So moving on to unnatural act. So unnatural act is defined as misuse through moral judgment and moralizing. In sexual ethics, unnatural act is defined to examine what they may signify when being used as a category for labeling certain sexual behavior. So in ethics of sexuality, the category of unnatural behavior can be easily found and opposed in connection of homosexuality or with the church. And unnatural behavior can also be found in relation to disobedience to the rules of ethics, and the usage adjective of unnatural can also be based on the fact that some acts are unconventional. So basically, unnatural act ni adalah satu situasi ataupun satu tindakan bila kita buat sesuatu tu tak normal ataupun tak konvensional ataupun salah di sisi etika dan moral. Dan dalam ethics, dalam sexual ethics, unnatural behavior ni adalah diperkatakan kepada satu tindakan sexual behavior yang tak normal kepada situasi masing-masing. Ada certain yang macam tak boleh buat benda-benda ni, ada yang certain tak boleh buat benda-benda ni. So dia depends on certain situation. So there are 4 possible moral views of sexual conduct taken account. So the first one is traditionalistic view, which is sexuality is used only as a tool of procreation, or simply to say for reproduction only. So in traditionalistic view, meaning of procreation is that sexuality only used for people to reproduce or to have babies or children. So secondly is romantic view. So romantic view is sexuality is a solely human phenomenon deeply bound with erotic love, and so necessarily leading to physically and mutual embodiment. So thirdly is Marxist feminist view. So in Marxist feminist view, the center of moral judgment is not on the sexuality itself, but it's the connection with male-female or interclass power manipulation, which it should be freed. So apa yang dimaksudkan dekat sini, Marxist feminist view ni tak meletakkan satu penghakiman moral terhadap sexuality, tapi dia hanya mementingkan kepada kuasa lelaki perempuan yang mereka rasa patut dibebaskan macam tu. So lastly is the liberal view. So in liberal view, the only one in which sexual ethics is not considered different from ethics of any other human activity. It understands sex itself as an ethically neutral activity, and what matters is not whether some conduct is sexual or not, but whether it is good or bad. So basically kat sini dalam liberal view, diorang tak meletakkan sexual ni adalah salah ataupun betul, tapi tindakan sexual tu betul ke tak Maksudnya niat di sebalik seksual tu adalah baik ataupun tak baik. Macam tu. Bagi diorang, seksual ni adalah aktiviti yang neutral. Tapi diorang mementingkan kalau macam contoh rape. Rape kan sexual activity kan, tapi dia bad conduct, dia tak baik macam tu. So moving on to 4 possible meanings of unnatural can be considered. So the first one is unnatural can be seen in comparison with animals whose behavior is taken as an example of naturalness. Such a view is based on the Rojak vision of civilization as a process destroying the originally noble human. So in here, animal and nature represent as an example of original states which we can revert to. So apa yang dimasukkan di sini dalam Rojak vision of civilization, Rojak vision of civilization ni adalah satu proses yang diorang memusnahkan sifat manusia yang mulia ni. Bagi mereka, haiwan dan alam adalah yang mewakili contoh keadaan asal yang boleh kita manusia ni kembali kepada mereka. Maksudnya sebab tu diorang samakan kita dengan sifat haiwan. Sebab tu diorang compare kita dengan haiwan. So secondly is the usage of body organs that is used in appropriate way is considered as unnatural. Here the appropriateness usually assessed in accordance with the intended design of these body parts, which firstly assumes we know their purpose, and furthermore it calls for the existence of this first determinant, which is the creator. Dekat poin kedua ni, apa yang diorang nak habang adalah bila kita melayan satu organ badan kita ataupun mana-mana part badan kita yang kita layan dengan tak appropriate, ia adalah dikira tak unnatural. Ia adalah satu tindakan ataupun satu behavior yang kita tak dikatakan normal. So yang boleh judge appropriateness ni adalah the creator. So the third point is the unconventionality of certain acts also can be labelled as unnatural due to the low statistical frequency. So bila ramai yang tak buat satu situasi tu ataupun satu behavior tu ataupun satu tindakan tu, dia akan diperkatakan adalah unnatural. Sebagai satu contoh, dekat Perancis, mencium di khalayak ramai adalah satu perkara yang normal dan frequently orang buat. Tapi dekat Malaysia adalah sesuatu yang tak normal dan tak selalu orang buat. Jadinya perkara itu dikategoriskan as unnatural. So lastly is polarization. So polarization is where behavior is not marked as unnatural, but on the contrary, it justifies naturalness as an innate desire behavior. Thus assumes that every genetically given or innate desire must be morally right. So dalam maksud point last ni, satu behavior tak dikategoriskan as unnatural, tapi bila satu kejadian tu adalah based on keinginan semula jadi kita, itu adalah natural. So everything yang berdasarkan keinginan semula jadi kita adalah morally betul. So moving on to the next slide is the validity after being analysed of the 4 possible meanings of unnatural can be considered. So the first point here, the scholar have found that the first point is to be incorrect because the animal actions here are taken as an examples of naturalness only in certain conditions, while their other actions are rather called animalistic and regarded with scorn. So apa yang dimasukkan dekat sini, kenapa scholar tu found that situation dalam poin nombor 1 ni adalah incorrect? Sebab perbuatan haiwan diambil sebagai contoh naturalness hanya untuk certain keadaan, tapi keadaan-keadaan lain ataupun perbuatan-perbuatan lain hanya dinamakan animalistic. Macam orang Melayu selalu cakap macam binatang, macam rakus macam binatang macam tu. Dan perbuatan ni di-regard as pencercaan, satu penghinaan macam tu. Next, the meaning of the second point is the word of unnatural here is strictly moral, but since it's based on the religion, it is only valid for its followers and is not generally plausible. So apa yang dimasukkan dalam second point ni, benda ni valid je, tapi dia valid dekat orang-orang yang dengan agama dia sahaja. So macam kita yang orang Kristian ni, dia ada dia punya pandangan terhadap sexual activity ni natural ke tak. So seperti yang kita tahu, dalam Islam, sexual activity ni diconsider as unnatural bila tak berkahwin. So bila dah berkahwin, benda ni normal lah kita buat sexual activity, tapi kalau tak kahwin tak natural lah gitu. So the third meaning has nothing to do with morality, but since it's based on conformity and thus belongs to manners. So, apa yang dimasukkan dalam poin yang ketiga, dia tak ada apa-apa kaitan pun dengan moral. Tapi dia based on kesesuaian. Sebab tu dia tak based on moral, dia based on manners, based on adab. So the first one is not correct because the very existence of an innate urge does not make the behavior based on its good or bad and thus cannot be used for justification. So apa yang nak dimasukkan dalam poin yang keempat adalah dia adalah tak valid sebabnya keinginan semula jadi tak justify satu behavior tu adalah baik ataupun salah. So sebab tu kita tak boleh gunakan justification dia. So the conclusion of the unnatural act is we must understand that by unnatural act the actual proceeding from the wrong source can be meant. So apa yang dimasukkan, kita kena faham kalau unnatural sexual act kita ambil daripada source yang salah, kita akan dapat maksud yang salah juga. For an example here is a person who bases their morality traditionally with logically label all non-reproductive sexual acts as unnatural, and because morality can be compared to a personal conscience, preventing them from joining the majority, when it commits something wrong, the morality of such a traditionalist is not any better or worse than a Marxist or a liberal. So dekat contoh ni, seseorang yang traditionalist, dia akan secara logik akan kata semua perbuatan seksual yang tak membiak atau tak menghasilkan anak adalah unnatural behaviour. Tapi disebabkan morality ni di-compare dengan personal conscience dan menghalang mereka daripada join majority, bila diorang lakukan kesalahan, moral orang traditionalist ni tak lebih baik pun ataupun tak lebih teruk pun daripada Marxist dengan liberal. So lastly, one's moral claim cannot be universalized without moralizing. Therefore, the first possible meaning why people label certain behaviour as unnatural is a moralistic universalization of their individually chosen view. So apa yang dimaksudkan dekat sini, kenapa orang melabelkan sesuatu tingkah laku sebagai unnatural adalah sebab moralistic universalization dia adalah daripada pandangan mereka yang dipilih secara individu.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So we continue to the topic homosexuality and natural law. Okay, so homosexuality is not a new thing in our world nowadays, right? So instead, it has become a very popular issue, a very crucial issue with endless debate all around the world. Homosexuality can be described as sexual or romance attraction and desire to the same sex with them. In another word, a woman will be more sexually attracted to a woman and so do to a man. From the surface, it seems odd and generally unexpected things to be seen. But time passes by and homosexuality seems to become more familiar until it becomes one of the most sensitive issues worldwide. On top of that, it has millions of followers and people that extremely support these worrying things until they able to have their own identity and make demonstrations to urge the government to legalize homosexuality in some countries. In addition, the media nowadays seems to play a big part in normalizing homosexuality. As we can see, like in the movies, in the songs, especially from the Western movies and songs, there is so much elegant and the lyrics that portray the LGBT, such as they really want to legalize the LGBT and accept it as a normal thing nowadays. What is worrying us right now is all the movies and songs is heard and watched by the people all around the world from the various age and groups. And this indirectly spread their ideology to the people and without we realizing it. Sooner or later, more people will start to normalize homosexuality in their life. The fact that we didn't know right now is the sooner or later, people will start to normalize homosexuality in their life, regardless of their morality views and their religion. However, homosexuality still receives different view and acceptance all over the world. There are some countries that accept this thing morally and legalize it in their society. For instance, Europe countries such as Spain, France, and Germany are openly accepting more homosexuality in their country, and there is no opposition from their governments toward people that practice it. So it means that the people of Europeans such as Germany, France and Spain can practice homosexuality freely in their society, in their social life. There are some countries that be in the middle between accept or against homosexuality, that may be due to their society that consists of various beliefs and customs, especially countries in South America like Brazil, Argentina and Mexico, that can be said as being neutral in this issue, as they have variety of acceptance towards homosexuality. Not to forget also, there are countries that extremely against homosexuality, as they label homosexuality as an immoral action and against the human nature in general. Countries in Middle East and Asia Pacific such as Tunisia, Egypt and Malaysia totally reject homosexuality in their society. Those in Western Europe and the Americas are generally more accepting of homosexuality than those who in Eastern Europe, Russia, Ukraine, the Middle East and Sub-Saharan Africa.
Now I will be explaining about the historical event of incest. So basically, incest had been practicing by people back then. For example, several of Egyptian Pharaoh married their siblings and had several children with them. For example, Tutankhamun married his half sister, and he was himself is the child of incest relationship between Akhenaten and an unidentified sister wife. Next is Oedipus. Oedipus is a Greek hero which is killed his father and later on married to his mother. So the story of Oedipus ends in disaster and shows the ancient taboos against incest. Next is the argument of incest. So firstly is the genetic argument. It is said that the activity of incest will later on resulted in genetic diseases, which is extent to which the risk increases or depends on the degree of genetic relationship between the parents. The risk is greater when the parents are close relative and lower for the relationship between more distant relative. So people are rejecting the activity of incest, which resulted in morally wrong, unacceptable in certain society because of the reason of in genetical disease. Next is family argument. From the history, it can be seen that many royal families married to each other between close relatives and also siblings. For example, in the Chinese dynasty, Korean and also Japan, they married between their siblings for political purpose. For example, to strengthen the influence of their power between the land that they had conquered, they married to their siblings so that the status for their power and influence will be increased. By the way, therefore, the practicing of incest between themselves will later on become the reason of. The next point is taboo. When we speak about incest, there are many societies in this world. I think the majority of the society in this world considered incest is a disgusting practice. We are not simply speak of it, for example, precisely in Malaysia. If the news covered about the incest activity, for example, between the father and the daughter, we will not speak of it from the law perspective, either it is legal or not. But we will simply say that it is something disgusting and unacceptable. Therefore, the argument of incest is something taboo in the society. Next, the boundary of love. It is said that love has no boundaries between each other. So therefore, because of we have no boundaries in love, it is no matter from one party to another party if they love each other. this resulted in the practicing of LGBT and also incest. But but there is argument when we see in social media, for example, such as Twitter, where people say that incest is acceptable because of we think it is disgusting. We can't say that it is immoral because they are not harming anyone. They are free to express what they feel. Okay, from the next argument, it is about the consenting adults. It is said that sex is something consent between one party with another. So therefore, if someone is agreed to do sex with another person, so the practicing of incest is also okay because they are two consenting adults. But from the next perspective is religion argument. It is something not acceptable. It is not because of the boundary of love or consenting adult. It is just the religion prohibited it, so we can't follow it. So, as conclusion, there are so many arguments about the practicing of incest. In fact, there are countries who are legalized the practicing of incest. For example, France. But in Malaysia, it is not legalized from this perspective of law. I think that's all from me, and thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Fidel bin Muhammad Amir, and I will present to all of you about HIV and AIDS. So, what is HIV and what is AIDS? Right, so HIV is the short form from human immunodeficiency virus. That is a virus that attacks cells that help the body fight with infection and also making a person more vulnerable to other infections and also diseases. But the other side, AIDS, or the short form from acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, is the late stage of HIV infection that occurs when the body immune system is badly damaged because of the virus. And for your information, this HIV and AIDS have their World AIDS Day that have been celebrated every 1st December every year, and founded in 1988, and it is the first ever global health day. Okay, so continue with the next stigma of towards the HIV and AIDS patient, which is as you can see in the infographic that have been provided. This is the world map on how countries treated the restriction of travel to the HIV and AIDS patient. So as you can see in the green one, which is they are welcoming or they are allowing patient with HIV and AIDS patient to travel, entry, stay and also residence in their country. So the total of 203 country. Alright, so moving on, which is 18 countries, territories and also areas have been required the HIV testing and also disclosure for certain types of entry, study, work and also residency permits. Alright, so the third one, the third type of country is the orange one, which is 11 countries, territories or area that prohibit or short or long-term stay on basis of the HIV status. And also they are the red one, the 19 countries have deport the non-national on the basis on HIV status, and also this country prohibit short or long-term on the basis of HIV status on entry, on study, work and also resident permit. So these 19 countries prohibit totally the patient from entering their country. So I would say here the conclusion is it's not just about the patient itself, but also the stigma and also the perception and also education actually towards the HIV and AIDS. Not just affecting, not just affecting the patient, but also affecting their freedom, to live like the normal person. Alright, so based on the moral judgment that I have mentioned before in the presentation, it leads to the stigma towards this HIV and AIDS disease. Alright, so because of this stigma and discrimination against people with HIV, there have been so many problems and so many ways that demonstrated the stigma and also the discrimination, such as negative labeling, discriminatory behaviors, and also negative treatment by healthcare professionals, their own families, and also the community itself. Not to mention that some of the healthcare professionals doesn't want to help these people with HIV and AIDS to cure. And this issue or this form and also ways that I have mentioned before have negative impact on the patient, such as self-isolation, social inclusion, loss of job, economic difficulty, and also poor access to healthcare services. That means that they are not just unfortunate to have this disease HIV and AIDS, but also have other consequences that impacted just not their life, but also maybe their family and so on. Alright, so moving on to the main discussion of this topic, which is the moral judgment on HIV and AIDS. Alright, generally or basically, almost every common society in the country around the world despises on people with HIV and AIDS. Alright, this is because that this disease is concentrated within so many I will say that behaviors or actions such as injecting drugs, sex workers, transgender, and also men who have sex with men. And although some of these activities were accepted either legally or socially and also morally in some community or some society in the world, this behavior already considered as less worthy in many societies, and thus HIV adds to the existing social judgment towards the behavior itself and also the disease. Alright, so before we jump into the discussion of the moral judgment of the HIV and also AIDS, we have to know first, is it the HIV and also AIDS treated equally as other serious diseases and also the pandemics? Alright, so based on the slides that have been prepared, alright, so the HIV and also AIDS is the I would say that the oldest disease compared to other two that I have prepared in the slide. So the HIV and AIDS derived in the year is 1981 and have been infected 38 million people as of 2019, and there are 25.4 million people currently and also have been accessing the antiretroviral therapy, which is if we convert it, it would be 66.8%. Alright, so the other two diseases that I want to compare with the HIV and AIDS is H1N1 and also COVID-19, which is we are currently facing. Alright, so the first one is H1N1. So if you can see at H1N1, it have been occurred just 2 years from 2009 until 2010, but the cases have been infected 1.6 billion people and have been caused by 0.3 million cases of fatal or death, which mean 0.02% of these cases death. Okay, that means that rest of the disease have recovered. Alright, so the next one is COVID-19. As you know, the COVID-19 has derived from 2019, and as of 6 November 2020, there are 49.2 million cases around the world, and the recovery cases have been recorded is 32.4 million %. And if we convert it into the percentage, the recovery cases is 65.6% of the total cases recorded. So I will conclude this slide with the HIV and AIDS have been treated equally and also have been given the extra attention from not only WHO, the World Health Organization, but also the other healthcare institution or ministry around the world, including our Ministry of